When it comes to urban legends, I feel like I've talked enough about government conspiracies on here, so today I wanted to challenge myself to really dig for legends with elements of truth to them. So, question for y'all, what's one urban legend that you're absolutely positively sure is true? Let me know in the comments, and let's see if I can boggle some minds today. The phrase "walk a mile in my shoes" takes on chilling connotations when the shoes are probably made of real human skin. And although the creation of such a pair sounds so gruesome as to be unbelievable, these shoes exist and are displayed at the Carbon County Museum in Rawlins, Wyoming, where additional items reveal more of the story of the mysterious outlaw, Big-Nosed George Parrott. So what led him to such a grisly end? Well, even before he died, this man was known for frontier crimes. He'd been arrested for horse theft, tried by a justice of the peace, and acquitted. He was also believed to have kept headquarters in the hole-in-the-wall country west of present-day Casey, Wyoming, with a number of other outlaws at the time. So, not a good man. He developed a reputation for stealing from travelers on stagecoaches, and then progressed to train robberies. Specifically, in August of 1878, Big-Nosed George and his gang, which included Dutch Charlie Burris, planned a theft from the Union Pacific Railroad pay car near Como, Wyoming, east of Medicine Bow. At that time, the UPRR carried cash via the pay car monthly for its own company payroll. So the bandits loosened a spike on the rails, wrapped it with telegraph wire, and hid in the bush, planning to tug the spike and dislodge the rails to derail the train so they could steal away with the money. But sharp-eyed railroad employees spotted the wobbly spike, repaired the damage, and alerted lawmen before the train arrived. So Big-Nosed George and his men fled to Rattlesnake Canyon at the base of Elk Mountain, about 25 miles southwest of the crime. Carbon County Sheriff's Deputy Robert Widowfeld and Union Pacific Detective Henry Tip Vincent tracked them there, but the outlaws killed them. So Big-Nosed George and his gang were later reported to have stolen several $1,000s in cash from a Miles City, Montana territory merchant named Con, when in spring of 1879, Con accompanied the military paymaster's wagon train from nearby Fort Keogh to Bismarck, Dakota territory. Now, Con was traveling to the east on a purchasing errand. The soldiers were headed to the North Pacific Railroad to retrieve funds to be distributed at the fort. One account indicates that the criminals apparently bragged in the Miles City bars about their recent successful exploits, including the Wyoming territory killings. Someone wired Carbon County Sheriff James Rankin, who headed to Montana in July of 1880, and brought Big-Nosed George back to Wyoming territory. Two other members of the gang had also just escaped. Rankin escorted his charge first to Laramie, and then rode with him on the train heading to Rawlins. On September 13th of 1880, Big-Nosed George was arraigned in Rawlins. He told his lawyer his name was George Francis Warden, and reported his birth date as being in April 1843 in Dayton, Ohio. He first entered a guilty plea, then changed his plea to not guilty, and then on November 16th, the jury was sworn, and 2 days later, George again changed his plea, back to guilty. Okay, make up your mind, dude. A motion was filed for arrest of judgment and sentencing, and the court took this under advisement, but denied the motion on December 15th. Now, at that time, death by rope necklace was the punishment for those found guilty of taking a life, and Big-Nosed George was sentenced to hang on April 2nd. 10 days before the scheduled execution, though, he tried to escape from the local jail. Like, I don't blame him. You wanna, make out with your life. He had used a pocket weapon to saw through the rivets on the heavy leg shackles that bound him, and struck jailer Robert Rankin in the head with them. Now, Rankin's wife, Rosa, discovered the attempted jailbreak and managed to close the outside door, thwarting Big-Nosed George's plans. She fired her husband's revolver in the air, and the men came running to help. Big-Nosed George's hands were tied behind his back, and that's when he wound up with the noose around his neck. The mob made him stand on an empty barrel, tossed a rope over the crossbar of a telegraph pole, but the rope broke, so George fell and was begging to just please end it, stop tormenting me, this is not fun. But instead the mob was like, no, we're gonna replace the noose, and this time you're gonna climb a 12-foot ladder. So this time, with the repaired leg irons weighing him down, climbing was difficult for George, and finally he to death. One report estimated a crowd of as many as 200 people gathered to watch. Nobody came forward to claim the body, but Dr. Osborne, who had been asked to be present to ensure the outlaw, died, and another Rawlins doctor, Thomas McGee, a Union Pacific Railroad physician and surgeon, claimed the corpse for medical study. Osborne made a death mask and had the outlaw skinned, and the shoes made. McGee studied the criminal's brain, and Big-Nosed George's skull was cut into 2 pieces. McGee gave the top half to his protege, Lillian Heath, who later became Wyoming's first female physician, so congrats to her. The lower skull half was buried in a whiskey barrel with the rest of the outlaw's bones. In 1950, the whiskey barrel was discovered in Rawlins when workers were excavating for a new department store at 5th and Cedar Streets, and the skull halves were briefly reunited and then split up again. So the skull cap is now housed at the Union Pacific Railroad Museum in Council Bluffs, Iowa, and the lower half of the skull skull is displayed at the Carbon County Museum in Rollins. I don't think I personally own anything made of animal products, and I don't feel like owning anything made up of human remains anytime soon. I'll leave that to my buddy Mysterion. He owns a collection of skulls, fingers, you name it. Here's a common enough fear: finding a body under the bed. So like vacation couples, newlyweds, Disneyland guests, all have been the subject of an urban legend involving hotel occupants who blissfully fall asleep only to wake up to an awful stench coming from either under the bed or inside the mattress. Closer inspection reveals that a dead body has been stashed away, presumably not anybody who's died of natural causes. Now this traveling tale has been confirmed multiple times over. At least a dozen newspaper stories have detailed hotel rooms that have doubled as body disposal sites. While the smell is usually apparent right away, at least one couple slept on a mattress containing a body in Atlantic City back in 1999. Cases in Colorado, Florida, and Virginia have also been reported. In 2010, guests at a budget lodge in Memphis were horrified to discover that they had been sleeping above the body of Sonny Millbrook, who was reported missing at the time. Fabric softener had been stuffed in the ceiling tiles to try and mask the smell, and at least 3 other occupants had also rented the room since the disappearance, which, yikes. A court eventually convicted Millbrook's boyfriend, like Keith Moody, of the crime. More recently, and by that I mean just last year, a tourist named Mr. Zong checked into a hotel in Tibet when he was made aware of a smell that was so bad that he was like, "Can I change rooms?" And 2 days later, after he had been granted the room transfer, he learned the source of the smell because he was summoned back to the original room by a group of police officers. He was like, "Yo, what's going on?" And they were like, "Oh, so somebody's died." He's like, "Okay, where?" And they're like, "Oh, just under the bed." The police mentioned that they had opened an investigation, but our guy wasn't a suspect because the body had been lying there for days before his arrival. So, great. New fear unlocked while traveling. Just gonna put that right under my fear of bedbugs. Yay. So we've all heard about some sort of boogeyman legend, right? The mythical creature that's gonna steal young humans who misbehave or whatever. So for years, young folks living in and around Staten Island kind of had goosebumps rising because of the tale of Cropsey, a boogeyman who lived in the woods and made a nocturnal habit of disemboweling anybody he stole. Parents were like, "Okay, come on, honey. That's no such thing. It's not true." Well, turns out it was real. Cropsey would drag humans from their beds, carrying a red-soaked axe in the crook of his arm, and well, ... The true identity of Cropsey was that of Andre Rand, born Frank Russian. In 1987, he was put on trial and convicted for abduction. Turns out he was connected to the rash of disappearances in the 1970s. He had a total of 5 notable alleged victims: Alice Pereira, Holly Ann Hughes, Tyahese Jackson, Hank Gaforio, and Jennifer Schweiger. He had once worked at Willowbrook, a defunct mental institution. Now, while he denied involvement in other cases, it's pretty clear that his activities had a heavy influence in the word-of-mouth stories that followed. Some folks even speculate that he was a Satanist who took the lives for sacrifices, and that he wasn't working alone. Yay. Here's a legend that terrifies me: rats in your toilet. These hardy rodents can climb, swim, and wriggle through tiny spaces with amazing agility. However, someone who has just been bitten on the butt while trying to use the bathroom might not be so impressed. Rat superpowers are near mythical. They can swim for 3 days, they can fit through holes the size of a quarter. They're highly skilled at running and climbing both horizontally and vertically across pipes, drains, and along surfaces, which are just some of the ways that rats can use drains to their advantage. In addition to these capabilities, rats can also swim up to half a mile across the water in one go, and even dive through the water to enter exposed pipes and find their way into a toilet bowl. This means that rats can easily climb up drains, which is aided by the presence of water where they can swim. And once a rat has decided it wants to enter your home, it can easily swim and climb up the U-bend of a toilet to gain entry to the toilet bowl, which is also possible for rats, who climb up drainage systems from the outside. And hey, fun fact, despite our long human history with lab rats, we know very little about the lives of the rats in our homes. If we're gonna consult the experts, veterinary scientist Chelsea Hemsworth said in an interview that we probably know more about the ecology of polar bears than we do about rats. One of the most important findings of the Vancouver Rat Project has been that rats form highly stable family groups or colonies, block by block in any study. And when people break up rat families, say by trapping or poisoning, the remaining rats are forced to move, and that's when they tend to spread disease. Yeah, no thank you, absolutely not. Here's a doozy for us to end our day with: using real corpses as props. Notorious outlaw Elmer McCurdy took on a second life following his death, because in 1911, the embalmed corpse of McCurdy became a grim sideshow attraction throughout Texas, with people eager to see the famed criminal on display in funeral parlors and carnivals. Though it's hard to document all of his travels, he eventually wound up in Long Beach, California, where someone apparently mistook him for a prop. He was hung in a funhouse at the New Pike amusement park, his humanity discovered only after a crew member on the $6 Million Man man, which was filming there in 1976, tried to adjust him, and they dislodged what was a very real arm. The following year, thankfully, his corpse was put to proper rest. Which, by the way, he's not the only real corpse that's been used for entertainment. Have you ever been on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disneyland? Now, I'm pretty sure the Florida version only houses prop replicas, but the California ride originally featured genuine real-life skeletal bones. They were provided by the UCLA Medical Center and placed around various locations throughout the attraction, so the morbid incorporation of actual human remains came from the Walt Disney Company's perpetual strides towards perfection and authenticity. Long story short, the technology at the time just wasn't up to par for producing realistic enough fake ones. Fortunately, don't worry, that's no longer the case. Disney has since replaced most of the real bones with realistic fake ones. But there's at least one skull that is still very much the real deal. Apparently, you'll find it in the captain's quarters on the headboard behind the dead man's skeleton in the bed with a magnifying glass and map. Some sources say there are other real bones still present in the attraction, so feel free to keep a close eye next time you visit the park. I know I will when I'm visiting soon. And that brings me to the end of my time once again. I've been Alexa, your resident ooky spooky girly, and if you were entertained by my ramblings today, could you help us out by giving this video a like, subscribing if you aren't already, hit the bell for more urban legend chatter from us here at Top 5 Scary Videos, and I'll see y'all next time, you lovely spooky people.